views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff and management of WWDB-TV.
So sexy it hurts, and I'm too sexy for Milan, too sexy for Milan, New York and Japan.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming back again this week. You know, I appreciate it. We appreciate it here at the station, WWDB-TV. And I love all your supporters, and I love all the feedback that we get from some of the shows. Please keep it up. That's why we're here. Today, I have a really special guest that has a fascinating, inspiring, uplifting, kick-ass story. And his name is Vital Germaine, correct?
Germaine, nice to be here. What a pleasure.
Nice to see you again, man. So
yes.
You've been doing some traveling.
I travel a lot. I'm very blessed. A part of my career that I've chosen is I get to travel and speak to large audiences. I was just up in San Francisco, the Pacific Northwest. Enjoyed my time up there, and then I'm back in Vegas for a short amount of time. And actually, we were just working together on a project, what, like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, about that. Yeah, over at the Four Seasons.
Four Seasons, yes.
And that was so cool because ran into someone that I used to work with years ago, and that's one of the things I love about what I do and where I live. Yes. Because as big as the town is, it's still a small town. It
is a very small town. I mean, the world has become relatively small with social media. Back in the day, do you remember the expression 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Yes, absolutely.
Now it's pretty much become 1 degree of social media. A quarter of a degree
from, from Vital Germaine. And like you said, you've been traveling around speaking. I want to go back to the beginning. Yeah. And I want the people to know who you are and why you are, and why you have your early journey on getting to where you're at today. So if you said earlier you were born in Africa.
Yes, so my background lends into what I've become today. So the story is quite complicated, but I've learned to sum it up in one paragraph. So I'm a Belgian.
We only have an hour.
That's okay, it's a one short sentence. I'm a Belgian national.
Gotcha.
With a British accent.
Yes.
Born in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Okay.
Who got to live the American dream by way of a French-Canadian circus. Once upon a time, what brought me to Vegas, I performed in Cirque du Soleil's Mystère original cast.
Dude.
Way back in 1993.
That was Mystère. Of all of the Cirque du Soleil shows, Mystère was my favorite.
Ah, thank you.
And the reason that I feel it is the best show is because it's about the performers, and it's not about the technology.
Yes.
You know, like O was great, but you know, you got all the moving floors and you got the water and all that stuff. But Mystère really focused on the performers themselves and what they were doing. So sorry to interrupt, but
no,
you're whenever somebody comes to town and they say anything about Cirque du Soleil, we're going to Mystère.
And that's the feedback that I still get. Oh, you were in Mystère. That's our favorite. It's the one that everybody loves.
And I love the usher.
The usher, no, they've changed. Some of those roles have changed.
That's too bad.
That is one of the beautiful things about the experience with Cirque du Soleil, is that they were continually evolving and growing and pushing the envelope and trying new things. And yes, the first several years there was an usher who was actually a character in the show, and he would throw out the clown.
He was
hilarious.
He was brilliant. And for those of you who don't know, what he would do is he was dressed up kind of like a maitre d', and when people would come into the showroom early, getting ready to seat, he would grab them, take their tickets, and he would walk them all over the in and out of the seats and up on the stage and all around. And I mean, I always made sure that if I had someone in town, friends in town or family, that we always got there half an hour early. I wanted to get up. I wanted to sit up in the first mezzanine there, so you really get to see everything. And just watch this guy, and he would he would flip people's popcorn out, and
that's still in the show. There are certain parts that are still in the show, just done through another character. So that's a part of the whole Cirque du Soleil evolution. But going back to Mystère, that was the watershed moment for Cirque du Soleil. I believe as a company, it was that historical moment where they went from sort of this avant-garde, elite, somewhat underground show that everybody who'd seen them loved.
Yeah.
But they only toured. So they would tour in tents across the United States. And then Steve Wynn, back at the time, other companies, apparently Caesar's Palace and Harrah's, declined to take the risk on Cirque du Soleil. Steve Wynn had a vision.
Yeah.
For all the things
Say
that
what you want about Steve Wynn, but he
everybody
had the
has their
vision.
opinion about him, but
Right.
I'm going back to
He was
back
brilliant.
then, regardless of his issues,
Right.
just as a businessman, as a visionary, he saw an opportunity and he took that risk and he brought Cirque du Soleil here when Las Vegas was still very much into the showgirl,
Right.
the purely TNA and the lookalikes, and that's what Vegas was all about. Miss Stair not only redefined Cirque du Soleil and took them to a different level, it also helped reshape Las Vegas as a landscape and a destination.
Because there's what, 4 Cirque shows now? 4 or
Oh,
5?
there are more. They actually at one
I mean,
point
here
they had
on the Strip.
Well, let's quickly count them. There's Miss Stair, there's O, there's Car, there's Zumanity. There's the recent one, Run, which apparently I just read a recent press release that they are unfortunately closing that one down. So that's already 5. But at one point they had 9.
Wow, I didn't realize there were
Yes,
that many.
they had a show called Zarkana.
Oh, right.
They had the Elvis show.
Yes.
So that's 2 shows that closed down, and then more will come to me. But at one point, Believe, Chris Angel was technically a Cirque du Soleil show. They collaborated.
Yeah.
So in terms of business, I believe that Cirque du Soleil actually somewhat overexposed. There was too much Cirque du Soleil. They diluted the product. Still an amazing company, an amazing show, but they sort of had to draw back.
Right.
And what I'm happy that happened is they went back a little bit to their foundation of we are here to innovate and really inspire and change the landscape in everything that we do, as opposed to mass marketing. They used to invest a full year plus a year of creation and pre-creation to create a show. Then it sort of became once every year they put out a new show.
Yeah.
And it's hard to maintain a certain level of a certain standard.
Right, and to come up with something better or something different, or I mean that's
It's a
gotta be
challenge,
tough.
but I think it's something that applies to us as just human beings. You've gone through several reinventions in your life. I'm assuming there are many listeners out there. We go through these stages in our lives where we have to adapt, we have to change. As a business, if you don't stay current and relevant, you go out of business.
Yes.
So that whole philosophy and that whole mindset of continually adapting is a crucial component of survival.
Right.
So that, for me, I absorbed and learned a lot about that.
And I think that, no offense to anybody, but I think we've lost that. A lot of that. I mean,
Yes.
it's you don't, that innovation, that striving for the next best thing, just to be the next best thing, not because, oh, I can make $1 million if I do this.
Yeah.
It's the art, I guess, is what I'm saying. We've lost some of that. That just breaks my heart sometimes.
I think we've lost it, and I completely agree with what you're saying. It's been lost, but I think it's this cycle that repeats.
I hope
Somebody
so.
comes along with something new, and it does very well, and everybody realizes, this is the new go-to strategy, so let's all jump on board, and then everybody does it, and then now it's no longer interesting.
Right.
And I think now, to go back to your point, we're at that moment in Vegas history where something significant new needs to happen.
Right.
I'm seeing a trend happen that now the rock stars are all coming to Vegas. They have residencies, so that's a form of innovation. DJs, they have brought nightlife or taken nightlife to the next level. So for me, that's the new wave. We've got the best chefs in town.
Right.
We've got the best shopping in town. So
And the best shows.
And the best shows still.
It's...
So there's still an element of innovation, but it's not as drastic.
Right.
Yeah, so I completely agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll come up with something for the next big thing.
Let's get to it. Let's brainstorm.
So you're in Mystere.
Yeah.
And how did you come to be a participant? What exactly did you do? What was your character? What was your part in Mystere?
So I'll go back to how I got to Mystere, because it's a very interesting, I believe, interesting story and a lot of challenges. At the time, I'm living in Manhattan. I've just left Belgium. I've come to America to pursue my American dream, and I arrive at Manhattan. I've never been there before, and I'm overwhelmed with the size of it. I grew up in London, but then I lived in this small town in Belgium, 15,000 inhabitants. I come to New York, massive. But I get off
Culture shock, yeah.
Total culture shock. I get off the plane and I remember driving into the city and it was this moment of, yes, I'm meant to be here pursuing the very thing. And I hope that viewers can relate to that when everything aligns and you know that you're on the right track. You know it's going to be hard, it's going to be tough, but you know you're on the right track. And so I actually lived...
And I need to stop you there because I think that inspired a couple of your paintings.
Many of my artwork.
Yeah.
I had a whole series, thank you for bringing that up. I have a whole series of artwork that is completely inspired by the New York experience.
Yeah.
The urban, the weathered element, the tough, the hustling, the pursuit of goals and dreams, the diversity. It's all in my artwork.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
but
anytime.
I wanted to make sure I got that point out because I love your work.
Thank you.
I really do.
Thank you.
And it's to me, and this is just, I don't know if it's right or not, but to me, art is an extremely personal experience.
Yes.
That you and I may look at a painting or a sculpture or a piece of art or a building even and not see the same thing.
Yes.
But still have an amazing reaction to it.
I agree. And that ties back into what's happening in Vegas. We talked about Cirque du Soleil. They brought a very deep, genuine sense of expression. It really was art form, an art form.
Yeah, it was. It was.
But again, I look at chefs. We've got the best chefs here in town. That is a form of expression. Mm-hmm. They are putting their life, their soul, their passion, their celebrations, their challenges. It all goes into the food, into the creation. And strangely enough, as people consider Vegas, well, it's this cheesy place. No, it is filled with substance and meaningful.
We have our
stuff.
cheesy parts.
Yes,
but
we do.
Every place does, but yeah, I agree. And it's Las Vegas is magical.
Oh, it's incredible.
It really is. And I love the desert at night.
Yeah.
And it's you know, if you want to go shopping, grocery shopping at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can do that.
Yeah.
Not that I do, but I know if I want to, I can.
We're spoiled, and when I travel, I end up somewhere sometimes magnificent, and I'm like, "What do you mean you're closed? It's only 3 in the morning. How can you be closed?" Because we get spoiled, and that's the beauty. So I have a love-hate relationship with Vegas. In getting older, so I don't drink and I don't gamble, but I don't judge those who do. You know, or my friends, most of my friends do in some capacity. But because I don't drink and because I don't gamble, the energy of Vegas, I'm very much into energy, and we can get into this a bit later on. But in terms of energy. So in terms of what the city represents, it's not my thing. But like you mentioned, we've got such beautiful nature elements surrounding us that I love that part. I love being able to get to LA in a short amount of time with we have easy access to everywhere in the United States. And so these are some of the elements that I absolutely love. And it's not too expensive, the weather's not bad. So there are a lot of pros about living in Las Vegas.
And you know, people that complain about the heat, I say, well, that just keeps out the riffraff, you know? But anyway, so how did you get to Steer?
I am living in Manhattan and I'm not exaggerating, in a rat-infested studio. I'm living in Spanish Harlem.
Okay.
Amsterdam, 109th and Amsterdam. It's now changed, but back then it was a horrible, worn-down neighborhood. I've got drug addicts living outside on the doorstep, and I live on the 5th floor, and I have nothing. I'm struggling. I'm literally counting pennies to make ends meet. But the strange thing is, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I am fulfilled because the material things didn't matter. I'm pursuing my goal and my dream, and I can see, and I'm just energized. So
and not enough people appreciate that.
We take it for granted.
Yeah.
It's so easy to take it for granted. And I have to remind myself often, the things that I have today that I now take for granted were things that I prayed for 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And all it takes is that little reminder, conversations like this,
exactly,
to bring us back. So I'm on scholarship at a dance studio called Steps, and things are going relatively well. I've got the scholarship, great, and I'm auditioning. I'm going to every possible audition because I want that gig. I want to experience and taste the stage. Fast forward a year and a half, I'm giving up. I'm going even more broke than I was. I'm ready to go back to Belgium with my pride swallowed and my tail, my dream just sort of vaporized. And a friend of mine calls me and she says, Vital, there's this company, she couldn't even pronounce the name. This is 1993, called Circus du Soleil or something. Could not pronounce the name. And she says they're looking for ethnic dancers with acrobatic background. And I'm thinking, well, that sounds like me, but this is the most silly idea anybody has ever said. You want me to run away with a circus? I didn't sacrifice my dream to run away with a circus, to roommate with a bearded lady and clean up elephant dung, because that's what I thought.
Sure,
Barnum
but
and
that's
Bailey.
what we all thought back then.
Yes.
When you the first time you ever heard about Cirque du Soleil, and I think the first time I ever even saw anything from Cirque du Soleil was on a PBS special or something, right?
Yeah, I remember the special.
And it was like, I'm going, wow, that is awesome.
Yes.
Anyway. So.
But in Europe, we'd never heard of them.
Yeah.
At least some people have been exposed. I'd never heard of them. I go to this audition. Now, this is the beauty of this experience. I go to this audition with nothing to lose. And I'm going to use intentional pun. I clowned around at the audition because this was silly.
Yeah.
And the very fact that I clowned around, I was intimidated because there was, you know, national champion at this, New York City Ballet, Joffrey Ballet, Alvin Ailey. They were all these amazing performers. You were in how many Olympic Games? Wow, incredible. I'm from Belgium, little town called Blankenberg. And so I was intimidated, but I didn't care. And so during the audition, they asked me to do things, and I'm clowning around, and I'm having fun, and I'm being childlike. And that was what they liked, because I will be honest, in all humility, 90% of the people that were at the audition were much better than I was.
Right.
But
much better at what they did.
They were better at acrobatics. They were better dancers. They were better actors. They were everything that I trained for.
Right.
They were better than me. But they were held back with trying to fit a very specific, for example, the dancers. They were New York City Ballet. They were doing these beautiful leg tendus and développés, and I'm thinking like, wow, how do you touch your ear with your knee? That's impressive.
Right.
But then when the choreographer asked me to do stuff, I just played around and I was silly and I was carefree. You want me to try that? Well, of course. How about I add this? And that was the ingredient that Cirque were looking for. And so I got lucky. They offered me the job, and this is where it gets really funny. They offered me the job, and I said no.
Oh, good.
Because I didn't know who they were.
Right.
And as a thank you, they said, well, you know, here are 2 tickets. Come and see the show. Saltimbanco, Battery Park. I go and see the show, and I had that same experience you did. Wow.
Yeah.
There might have been a few, you know, not so proper words that I said in expressing that, but it was something, it was if the Holy Ghost, Allah, Buddha, all the religious entities of the world had passed through me, and I'd been touched by them. It changed me. And the blessing of the stories, I thought that I'd lost the opportunity. They called me a second time and actually offered me more money, thinking that I'd held out for more money.
That's why, you were holding out for the money.
So I got very, very lucky. And what's the expression? Luck is when fortune meets preparation.
Yes.
And when I compare my story with other Cirque performers who were sent in tapes several times, they'd auditioned 10 times.
Oh, I know a couple that have auditioned for 3, 4, 5, 6 times to try to get into Cirque, and none of them have.
Nope.
So I told them that's because they knew me.
But
your experience the first time that you saw a Cirque show, the only thing the first time I saw it, the only experience that I had like that up to that time was seeing the Beatles for the first time on Ed Sullivan.
Ooh,
and so that whole experience that you had at that time, and just, I don't know how to explain it.
It is almost hard to explain. It's just something that is beyond words. It's this overwhelming feeling and sense of beauty, euphoria. You've just had one of the highlights of your life.
Yeah.
And because it's so amazing, it's hard to vocalize and express. I know.
And it's not something that you just can't put it into words.
No.
And if you, and when someone else, when someone else has had that experience.
Yes.
You know, and you just know it, and it's something that you recognize in the other person.
Yeah.
And it's something that you share, that no amount of explaining or whatever. And I would like to, at one point in time, one of my goals is to go to all of the Cirque shows and film the audience.
Oh, see the expressions.
Just the audience, because I look around, and because I do what I do, I'm always looking at people. I'm always, just kind of, And I know that the last couple of times that I have gone to a circus show, that I watch the people watching the show, and you just see these amazing.
They are in awe.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I was very blessed and privileged to be a part of Cirque du Soleil as a company and be surrounded by international performers who defy gravity, who are courageous, they stare death in the face, they do things that the human body is not supposed to do. They have a dedication that is unparalleled. They are extraordinary beings, and by osmosis, you're a part of that.
Yeah.
You become that.
Yeah.
It was absolutely unbelievable. And my career ended, unfortunately. I broke my legs and had several surgeries, and it ended sort of like, you know, one moment of imperfection,
Yeah.
and it all ends.
And I'm surprised that that isn't more common in the cirque shows. When you see some of the things that they do, and just one tiny little miscalculation or misstep or whatever can be disastrous.
It can be disastrous. There have been some disasters, I believe, in their 30-plus year history, 2 deaths.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But a part of the thing is, people also think, well, yes, Cirque du Soleil must be so free and reckless and so amazing, and it is. But there is a very rigid structure.
Yeah.
It's not a free-for-all.
Right.
And so when we push the envelope, it parallels life. You take risks. You do take that risk, but you don't recklessly take a risk.
It's a calculated risk.
It's a calculated
it's
risk.
something that you have prepared for. It's
exactly.
something and not just you, because you are part of the whole team,
The team has to, in terms of team, and I'm glad you bring that up, because in terms of team, that for me, that experience epitomized what it takes, because a lot of individuals,
right,
but you can put a lot of incredible individuals together. If they can't work together, if they can't collaborate, there is nothing.
right, and leaving the ego aside to allow that group or that team to perform as a team.
Now, off the record, there were a lot of egos.
Of course there are.
There were a lot of egos.
There has to
Yes.
be, or
Yes.
they wouldn't be doing that.
But when it comes to where the ego disappeared, is that once you're on stage,
Right.
and your life is in my hands or my life is in your hands, no matter what happens, I've got your back.
Right.
No matter what happens, you've got my back.
Exactly.
And that's part of the magic that allows us, or that allowed me to go out there and do the magic. And this applies to regular life. If you have a friend, a family member, a loved one, a spouse who has your back, no matter what, you can argue and you can fight.
Right.
But when it comes to the nitty-gritty of life and they have your back or you have their back, it gives us wings.
Right.
So that's sort of a lesson, is that anybody that people care for, have their back, and if you care for somebody, reciprocate, and people thrive. So that's kind of one of the many life lessons that I took away from Cirque du Soleil.
Wow.
There are endless lessons.
So now you're out of a job. you're
Yes.
in the hospital.
Yeah.
You got a couple of broken legs. Then what?
Well, this is
What
where
happens then?
What happens there, it's when there are violins and cellos who play a very sad song. So now, not to play the woe is me part, but this is life. We get knocked down.
Right.
We've all experienced being fired. Our hearts are broken. We lose a loved one. It's that same experience where you go through a phase of grieving.
Sure.
So I went through a depression. It took me 2 to 3 years to embrace that my superpower, so to speak, my cape, had been taken away from me. And that's tough to struggle with. But the lesson is, I allowed myself to grieve, and then I got to a certain point in time where, okay, I need to snap out of this. Now, I don't recommend to tell people who are grieving to snap out of it. When it comes to tragedy and things like that, you've got to comfort somebody and be there for them. And
Wait. The difference is you telling yourself,
Yes.
snap out of it, someone else telling you, snap out of it.
Correct, there's a difference.
That doesn't work.
No.
If you're not ready to, if you haven't come to it yourself.
Yes. And that's exactly what it comes down to. I was ready to hear it from myself. But while I was crying, while I was weeping, feeling sorry for myself, because it was oh, poor Vital, I did go through that. I played the victim. And had somebody just said to me at that time, snap out of it, I would have been angry, the ego would have come out.
Right.
So be gentle with people who are going through a challenge.
Exactly.
Care for them. And sometimes it's not even about giving advice. It's just listen, empathy.
That's the key, I think, right there, is just knowing that someone has listened to you without telling you what to do about it.
That's exactly, and that brings more
that's
value.
hard to do, man.
Because
It really is, because we want to, especially if it's somebody that we love.
yes,
We want to help them,
yes.
but we can't, other than just being there.
But that is, sometimes that's the best help you can give, is just be there, just
Right.
listen. And you can always ask them, how can I help you?
Right.
But the worst thing is to give somebody
You're right.
a motivational
If they
pep
ask
talk.
for help,
That's different.
then you have to
Yeah.
give it to them.
So fast forward, go
Sorry,
through the
yeah.
depression, and then I realized to myself, okay, I've got to snap out of it. And now comes the work, because you've mentally told yourself to snap out of it, but now you've actually got to go through the steps and do it. It's one thing to say, and it's two things to do it. And so the strategy that I implemented, my saving grace at the time, I had a dog. Okay? And so there were days I could not get out of bed. The only reason why I got out of bed is because I had to feed my dog. So then if that was the reason why I got out of bed, that got me out of bed. And then I would tell myself, okay, well, if I can get out of bed, I can take him for a walk. If I can take him for a walk, I can do one more step and reach this. And I just built gradual steps to build a better and a new life, reinvent myself. But it was hard. And so for people who are going through life challenges, you've got to dig very deep. You've got to believe in a better tomorrow, and then just take small steps. And then what happens with the small steps, you sometimes get punched in the stomach and you
Yeah.
fall back down the stairs. Brush it off, get back up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy, but it can be done. And it was very dark places. Yeah, but here I am.
Yeah. I've had the opportunity to see you speak in front of an audience, a group, and I don't know if calling you a motivational speaker is correct or proper, but I do know that I watch people.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to you, I'm watching you on the stage, and I'm watching the reaction in the audience. And I think you can see it too from up on the
Yeah.
stage. You see those people that the light goes on, or something happens behind their eyes and they go, hey.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really cool. And from what I've seen, this is just my experience, your speaking or your talking to the audience is not, it's not a Tony Robbins kind of thing.
No.
It's something that almost anyone can understand.
So
And-
I believe relatability is a key component to getting a message across.
Exactly.
So I'm glad you bring that up. That's a very high compliment for me. Tony Robbins, I think he is the consummate motivational speaker. I bring energy to the room, but I prefer, the term motivational speaker is the common term.
Right.
I like to inspire people with my experiences, with my energy, with my knowledge. But I personally believe motivation is something you've got to find within you. I can give you some fuel and some tips and maybe, a gentle kick up the backside to get you going, but then you've got to take over and do it yourself.
Right.
So I like to just inspire people, because that means they're doing it for them. And when it's for them, they're probably a little bit more invested. Motivation, I find that motivation is, yeah, let's do this, and then they're gung-ho for 2 days.
Yes.
That's motivation.
But I think that the point that I was trying to make is that you are not motivating people externally.
No.
You are providing them with their own internal
Yes.
inspiration. And I want to share my Tony Robbins moment, because I've done his firewalk.
Congratulations.
And that's a whole story in itself and what happened after. But you go through this class for the whole day, and they're feeding you all of this I want to say crap, but I don't mean crap.
Right.
All of the dogma, if you will.
Yes.
And I went to the class because that was the only way you could do the firewalk. You had to go through the class. And what they do when you're up there and they've got the thing laid out and all the hot coals and stuff like that, and there's a guy standing there, and when you walk up and it's your turn, and they ask you, what do you need to take this first step?
Ooh.
And my response was, being a little bit of a smart ass, I don't need it. I already got it. And I just took off walking.
Wow.
Because that's the way it was like, and I didn't want to prove anything to anybody there. I wanted to prove it to myself. It's something that I had, you know, like I said, I majored in psych college and all this stuff that I was going through. And I saw that and I thought, oh, I could do that. I mean, yeah, piece of cake, I could do that. I know I could do that. And so that's why I went through the course and all that stuff. So fast forward, year and a half. I was helping, a friend and I were moving a refrigerator. We were carrying it like this, lifted it up to get it over this car, and I felt something pull in my side. So I kind of, you know, we got it in there, and I went home, and I was kind of, got more and more, oh, ow, ow. So I told my wife, you need to take me to the emergency room.
Oh, is that bad?
Yeah,
Wow.
it was bad because I couldn't breathe then. I mean, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, and then I couldn't breathe, and I thought, oh my God, I'm having a heart attack, you know. And so the hospital was about a block and a half from the house, and it was an osteopathic hospital. So I went in there and go through the X-rays and get the thing, and the doctor said, yeah, it's just, you know, you pulled a muscle, and you're going to be okay, and you know. Everything will be fine, you know, put this brace on you, and blah, blah, blah. And they're wheeling me out in a wheelchair to go out the door. And just before I got to the door, this guy comes running down the hall, and he's going, wait, Mr. Stiles, Mr. Stiles. And the doctor's with me, and he goes, we found something on your lung in the X-ray.
Ooh.
And I went, what?
Ooh.
So they wheel me back in, they take another look at it, and they decide, okay, well, we think you have lung cancer. It actually turned out to be an effect of Agent Orange, but so I'm in the hospital for 2 weeks. They're going to do lung surgery. So I have the picture of me walking across the hot coals, sitting by the bed, because I'm telling myself positive mental attitude, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
all that crap. And so the surgeon comes in, and he's telling me, okay, we're going to cut you open tomorrow, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And he goes, oh, what's that? And he goes, oh, that's, you know, I walked over the hot coals and blah, blah, blah. And I told the surgeon, I said, I got this. You know, you do your part, I'll do mine, you know, because you know, I was convinced that it was not lung cancer. They were convinced it was.
Right.
And so anyway, not the next day after the surgery, but the day after, when the surgeon came in, when I was a little more coherent, and he says, I got to tell you about that picture. And I said, oh, what's that? And he goes, you are the first patient that I've had that's undergone this surgery that did not have to be put on a respirator after the surgery. He said the amount of bleeding that when we had you cut open was less than I expected.
Yeah.
And so it was like, not that you can overcome shit like that mentally, but you can aid. And
I
so
agree. Yes.
if you have that, I mean, you still need that surgeon, you still need
Yes.
those drugs or this treatment or whatever, but if you have that right attitude, and if you have that, that can make a big difference.
I totally buy into
That's
that.
what you give to people when you do your speaking.
Oh, thank you. Wow, that's...
And I saw that in the crowd. I saw those people that I thought to myself, this person's going to walk out of here and they are going to do something great. This person's going to walk out of here and they're going to do something great. And maybe 9 out of 10 of them won't, but that 10th one is really going to kick some ass.
And that makes me feel good, because that's ultimately the reason, one of the reasons that I do what I do, is because I want to inspire, empower, enable people to overcome their demons, overcome their challenges, walk over the coal or through the coal, and reach higher. So now the metaphor that I use is reaching higher.
Right.
Because
that was great. Because you had the one, you know.
But it's the metaphor of life, is that because we are all trying to grow, and for me it is all about reaching higher. And if you have the desire, the awareness that you can reach higher, and that, because mindset,
Yeah.
You literally, your mindset is what, because without your mindset, you might not be here right now.
Exactly.
And so that's all, it all starts with our attitude, and attitude is my thing. One of my favorite all-time quotes, Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor.
Yes.
He talks about attitude in a way that when I read that quote for the first time, it resonated with me to such depth that I've adopted it ever since. And his quote is, "The last of human freedoms is the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances."
Brilliant.
And why that is so powerful to me is that basically it says, you're never a victim of circumstance unless you so choose. So whatever you're going through today, whatever you will go through tomorrow, you still get to choose. Now, sometimes the choice is tough.
Yeah.
It's seemingly impossible, but you still get to choose.
You still have that choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that when I read that for the first time, it was like, okay, life just changed. And it's a big component of my message, mindset, attitude.
Yeah. I think that the fun thing for me in life is that I read a book once. I read a lot of books, but I read one particular book called The Celestine Prophecy.
I've read it.
Yeah. And every time I read something or see something or meet someone, there's a message there. And that's one of the
Yes.
precepts in the book, is that we all meet each other because we have a message for each other.
Yeah.
And we may not know what our message for them is or their message for us,
Yeah.
but we get that. And there are little bits and pieces that we pick up along the way. I like to say, one of my favorite sayings is, there's magic everywhere if you're paying attention.
I like that.
You do. You just, I mean, I've been walking down the street and just looked at another person that has looked at me at the same time, and we both just smiled, and it was like there's, it's like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And it's just all out there.
Yes,
if we
it
would
is.
just take a second and pay attention.
But what tends to happen, we grow old, and what I mean by old is we become jaded, we lose our sense of curiosity, we lose that optimism of childlike being, and so everything just sort of gets dulled, and we just sort of live in this one lane.
We stay in our lane.
We stay in our lane, and
Yeah.
it's a shame because the world is such an expansive thing, and there are so many opportunities, and I love how you phrase that, the magic of it all. Tying very quickly into, I love what you said about, you triggered a very deep thought. It went away. It was so profound. It will come back. It will
It'll come back.
It will
It'll come back. Yeah.
Yeah. But I like how you sort of capture things. And I wanted to tie back into, I know what it was. So in terms of attitude and the magic and all these things, so a big component is, again, we get to choose. And so my childhood was very, very challenging. And I know this relates to everybody. We've all had moments we've had moments in our lives where we want to give up,
Yeah.
where we don't see what's that expression, the light at the end of the tunnel. And so what I've learned is, going back to attitude, is that the element of attitude, the element of mindset, the element of belief, all the things that you've touched on, without those elements, it is very hard to achieve goals, succeed in life. And when I talk about success for you is different than it is for me.
Exactly.
So people need to sort of understand, well, this is my journey and this is what I want to achieve. And in terms of the tragedy and the pain, try to use whatever pain you've experienced. We get two choices. I can experience pain and I can be angry and I can feel sorry for myself and I can stay here. Or I can use that pain as a means of motivation, as a means of inspiration.
Right.
So don't let your pain and your challenges go to waste. Use those to the best that you possibly can, because we are motivated. We either run away from pain or we run towards pleasure.
So if a theory that I have is that when you have difficulties in your life, when you have strife, when you have problems, that's when you grow.
Yes.
Because when you are, when everything's cool and you're comfortable and you're complacent and, you know, why should I bother? You know, I got everything I want, blah, 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 so I'll just sit here. And that's what ends up happening. You sit there and you never get anywhere else unless something comes along, slaps you upside the head and says, dude, move on.
Wake up or move on, or change, adapt. Life is full of challenges, and again, like you said, those moments when you're down and out, taking a standing count because you know you've had this Mike Tyson guy punch you in the head and you're wobbly. You're right. That's the moment when you grow. But the only time that you grow is, first of all, you've got to be aware of what's going on.
Right.
You've got to allow yourself to understand that, okay, I'm down and out, but it's not the end all. Now you've got to start trying to figure out and plan, what do I want? And then once you determine sort of where you want to go and what you want, you've got to reverse engineer it and then take the appropriate steps. Tony Robbins, what do you need to do to get from there to there?
Right.
For you, it was easy.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, because I knew I could do it. But that didn't just happen.
No, this is a process that you've probably had over time.
All of the things that I had experienced and dealt with over my entire life brought me to that moment to where, number one, I saw it, I know I can do that. It wasn't just, you know, oh, I'm cool, I can do that. It was like, it made sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
It was like, okay, yeah, that's cool. I want to do that next.
Yeah.
You know?
But that philosophy applies to no matter where you are in life, whether you just simply want to get a promotion from, you know, what is considered a small, meaningless job, or whether you're the CEO, it's the same mindset.
Right.
What do you need to do? Who do you need to become to walk through the cold?
Yeah.
And a lot of people forget that step, or they get intimidated.
Well, they get hung up on, oh my God, those holes are hot. I'm going to burn my feet.
Yes.
And it's not, the trick is, or for me, this is what I thought. The trick is not walking across the coals. The trick is taking the first step.
Ooh, yes.
Because that was what, if you don't take that first step, I mean, once you take that first step, you're committed.
That's right.
You have to move forward.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you're going to be in deep trouble. Because no bullshit, that stuff's hot.
You will get burned.
You will get
metaphorically
burned.
and literally.
But it's and like I say, it wasn't for me, it wasn't the walking across the hot coals. It was taking the first step.
I like that.
That's what was in my head to motivate me. Dude, all you gotta do is take one step.
One step at a time.
And you're there. Yeah.
How do you climb a mountain? How do you climb Mount Everest?
Yeah.
One step at a time.
One step at a time.
But people forget that, and they look at the big picture sometimes. And yes, looking at the big picture, Mount Everest, that's massive. I can't do it. And you've lost before you've even started. But if you just take it, like you said, one step at a time.
In some of the editing I do, there's some programs that are really complicated.
Yeah.
And there's a lot there that I have to get into this package. And it's just like, okay, put it up there, put it in the computer, load it up, and then just do this part, then do this part, then do this part, then put all the pieces together.
Yeah.
And that's the way, that's anyway. So now that we've saved all the world.
We can drop the mic and just leave.
Yeah. No, we can't, because we still have a lot to cover, believe it or not. We got some books here.
Yes, we do.
And not only are you an artist, and I want to say an accomplished artist,
Thank
and
you.
I don't know exactly what that means other than you do some kick-ass work.
Thank you.
Some beautiful work. I love it. So we got 4 books here. And the first one that I was aware of is Flying Without a Net. And this was the true story of a boy who turns pain into purpose and runs away with Cirque du Soleil. And I love that little tagline. It's great. And so this was the first book that you wrote.
That was the first one.
And it was about your experiences in early life. And
it's a memoir, basically, yes, repainting the journey, because you asked me the question, how do you get to Cirque du Soleil?
Right.
So the very short version is, you know, a little kid who grew up in London, and it's not a very happy story, but there's a hopeful and positive ending.
Right.
Because again, we experienced tragedy. So the crux of the story is, I had an alcoholic mother, a sexually abusive father, And I was raised, unfortunately, in the English foster care system.
Whoa.
So now statistics predicted that I'd be dead or in jail by the age of 18 due to gang-related violence, drug overdose, and things like that. Going back to your thing about the call, I decided at a very young age, and I can try and break down why and how, but it's just something instinctual, to be honest. It was just an instinctual reaction. That is not my path. So humans, we've got to make that decision. Do you want to travel that path? And sometimes the path, it's easy to choose the path of crime and temptation and drugs and easy money and sex and rock and roll. So I made a choice.
No, wait. Sex and rock and roll. You can't.
That's nothing bad with that, right? There's nothing bad with that.
I'm sorry.
But meaning getting caught up in that, because
right.
that lifestyle could lead to, I mean, we see a lot of rock stars who are amazing. They bring so much quality and value to the world, but they end up in these dark places because they get caught up in that lifestyle. So in the home, I was tempted with drugs. I was tempted to become a drug dealer, and it wasn't me. So you've got to identify, and it means digging deep into yourself and understanding, who are you? What do you want to become, and what are you willing to do to become that thing? And my motivation, I mentioned earlier, we run away from pain or we run towards pleasure. One of the things that motivates me is a statistic suggested or told me that, Vital, you are worth nothing. You are a number, you will end up in jail, and that hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts to not be loved in any capacity, but when your father has abused you sexually, you've been made to feel like you are not even good enough to be loved. So all these things have a heavy, heavy impact. And I was determined to not feel those things again. I chose, well, if I'm good at something, I won't feel like I'm worthless. That was my why. And by connecting to that why, that gave me fuel. So if people take the time to truly understand what they are, who they are, that will open doors, because you're in touch with who you are.
Right.
And to go one step deeper, a lot of people, when we talk about our sense of purpose, it's a question of, well, I want to make the world a better place. I want to enable people. That's poetic. But get to the truth of, because ultimately it's about how we feel. And I do want to make the world a better place.
Yes.
But ultimately, the real reason why I do it is a little bit selfish. I don't want to feel worthless. Now, the poetry comes in while I'm pursuing that feeling of not feeling worthless. If I can bring value to other people and make the world a better place, then it's a win-win for everybody. But be honest with yourself when you're trying to understand what your objectives are.
And I love that, and I love that philosophy. The next one, I gotta show you here, the picture on this book is a young boy with some balloons, okay? Flying without a net, okay. The next one is Flying Without a Net 2.0.
So that is the sequel. So this is me as a child, but it also ties into life in Cirque du Soleil. So there are flashbacks and flash forwards.
Right.
This is now more the voice of an adult, where I'm now understanding a bit more how life works.
Gotcha.
And I'm dealing with self-doubt. I'm dealing with confusion. And so how do you overcome that in order to follow your North Star? So that's now a bit more the voice of the adult. So this gets into the world of entrepreneurship and finding sense of purpose and connecting with your true self. This is more innocent, that's a bit deeper.
Gotcha. Why the elephant with the balloons on the front cover?
Great question. So, romantically, I love elephants. I think they are this beautiful, powerful, yet gentle and intelligent animal. I just love elephants. Now, there's a bit of a contrast because circus is associated with elephants. I am completely against elephants in the circus.
As am I.
Good. However, there's still that connection of, oh, the elephant, it's this sort of innocent animal. And so it's the subliminal connection of circus and elephants, but yet in this picture, the elephant, for me, the metaphor, it's got balloons and it's flying free. It's flying free.
Right.
So there's a lot of depth to my shit.
Okay, now we have innovation mindset.
Yes. So now this is Vital, the business owner. So after Cirque du Soleil, I had a production company and I produced events for about 8 years, theatrical events, corporate events here in Las Vegas, and I did very well. And I learned a lot about business. And then
I want to talk to you after the show.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then after that chapter, I ended that company because I felt like I needed a new challenge. I burnt out, and if I wasn't passionate enough about something and wasn't giving the best of me, I felt that maybe I shouldn't be doing it anymore. So then I ventured into speaking, but I leveraged all my business experiences, my experiences with Cirque du Soleil, my experiences as once upon a time, I played soccer for the national youth team of Belgium.
Oh, wow.
So I had these experiences of what does it take to be extraordinary? What does it take to evolve and constantly become a better version of yourself? And so that's what this book is about. And now this is predominantly focused on corporate culture.
Gotcha.
This is more of a business book.
Gotcha.
Because I'm now talking to the entrepreneur, the leadership, the business. This is the most recent. Came out maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it came out just the end of last year, right?
It's a very simple...
Healthy, wealthy, and happy living.
Yes. It's a very easy read. You'll read it in 20 minutes, and I break what I think are the fundamentals of living a happy, healthy, and wealthy life into what I think are three very simple steps. The beauty of this book is that you can kind of just go back and read it again and get a reminder and get back on course. And in fact, people have told me that, you know, I'm reading your book for the third time.
This is one of those books that I don't know how many people have this experience, but there are certain books that I have that I will just randomly open to a page, and there's a message there for me.
There's a message.
And it's like, oh wow, yeah, perfect, great.
Yeah.
This is awesome. You got another one coming up, or?
Yes. So ultimately, there will be. So we've got Flying Without a Net, and then Flying Without a Net 2.0.
Right.
I will eventually get to Flying Without a Net 3.0.
Oh, cool.
But that's going to take some time. What I'm focusing on now is recently created my first online course. So
Nice.
that's kind of where I'm going now, because I think that we talked about trends. I'm following a trend. Sometimes
Right.
I innovate,
Of
but
course,
sometimes
yeah, as am I.
on a business level, you've
Yeah.
got to sometimes follow trends. And I believe that people are starting to gravitate more to online learning. I think education is going through an evolution or a revolution. And I think it's the online course. We're now just focusing on, well, I need to learn this, so let me take this course. YouTube set the tone.
Most everything that I do here in the studio, I'm self-taught. I researched it online,
Yeah.
on YouTube, on, okay, how do I do this? How do I set this up? How does this work? And there is an enormous amount of information out there, and on almost anything you could possibly want to do.
And that's exactly it. So I'm tapping into that because that's where the modern mindset is going. And so I recently created a course about communication. When I mean communication, it's about it's about relationships.
Right.
The way that we communicate, the way that we present ourselves either makes or breaks communication. We misunderstand each other, we get into fights, there's the ego, and all these levels of disconnect lends to failed relationships. Jobs that we don't like. We hate and have anger within us simply because we can't see eye to eye, and there's a disconnect. So my objective with this online course about communication is to enhance relationships and allow people to have the ability to clearly communicate in a way that is relatable,
right,
and that somebody can receive.
Nice.
Because we can disagree.
Sure.
But if we are able to communicate on an intellectual and an adult level, we can disagree yet understand each other.
And I like that, and we need to try to do more of that.
That is a whole other talk unto itself.
That's a whole show.
Yes, but empathy is at the foundation of everything that I do. It's all about taking the other person into consideration.
Well, and that's the key right there.
Yeah.
Is if we cannot empathize with the other person, or if we cannot not sympathize but empathize, there's no way we can ever come to any kind of an agreement.
It's very tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's unless most of the way we do it is because I'm gonna get something out of it.
Yes.
So I'll agree with you, or I'll cooperate with you because I'm gonna get something out of it. And that's, most of us, that's why we do it, you know?
Well, I mean, here we are entering a political climate, and I'm not going to get into politics or religion, but for me, I just see it as you have a different belief. You like a purple shirt. Because I think a yellow shirt will be better doesn't mean that I'm right.
Exactly.
And so if we can apply that very basic mindset to life.
Unless the yellow shirt sets the room on fire every time. No.
Well, that's different.
No.
If you say anything that is detrimental or that is filled with anger or hate or danger or hurts people, that's maybe where I will draw the line.
Right.
But if it's just a question that your belief is different to mine,
right,
I will respect it.
And we have a show on here called WTF America.
Oh.
And it's an extremely difficult show because we talk about politics and current events.
Yeah.
And there are three hosts. There's myself, who is a former Marine Vietnam veteran, hippie.
Thank you for your service. Wow.
A black former Metro cop, and a white lesbian single mother Republican. And so we try to discuss the issues.
Yeah.
And talk about whether it's healthcare or whatever, without getting into the name calling and the finger pointing, and it's not easy.
And the name of that show is
WTF America.
Wow, that sounds like an
and sometimes we get way off in left field.
That's okay.
And you can see that we get really passionate. And one of the examples that Bianca was using, she had asked me, John, what if you're driving down the street and there's a cop behind you, what are you worried about? I said, well, I'm worried about getting pulled over and getting a ticket.
Right.
And she said to Dirk, if you're driving down the street and there's a cop behind you, what are you worried about? And he goes, I'm worried about getting pulled over and shot. And those are the kind of things that we try to discuss is that I do not understand that feeling, that fear that every black person has in that situation, and whether it's justifiable or not, at some point in time, it has become justifiable.
Yeah.
And you know, like white privilege. White privilege doesn't mean that I've gotten anything better. It means that I'm not worried about getting shot if I get pulled over by a cop.
That is a nice privilege.
So it you know, and those are the things that we try to discuss. And believe me, we get into some heated discussions, but at the end of the show, we all walk away. I think it's cathartic for all three of us.
Yes.
And to be able to talk about that stuff with somebody that, you know, like she says, okay, men are afraid that women are going to laugh at them. Women are afraid that men are going to kill them. Wow. So, you know, that's real feelings for some people, and we need to try to have some empathy. That's where I was going with that, was have that empathy that, oh, wow, I never understood that.
Now, the thing about empathy that people sort of undermine is it's often taken, or it used to be viewed as a weakness.
Yes.
Because, oh, you're being empathetic,
Bleeding
you're being
heart.
soft and this and that. But I recently learned, this is interesting, that the FBI, when it comes to interrogation, they use empathy.
Really?
So, but this is what it comes down to. Empathy isn't a weakness. It's literally about putting yourself in that person's shoes, their head, their emotional state. The better you understand that person and you understand how they view the world and what they're experiencing. So as an FBI agent, if you're a terrorist and I'm interrogating you and I'm trying to understand how you're thinking and how you're feeling,
right,
that actually empowers me.
Absolutely, I get it.
Empathy is a very powerful thing, and I wish that the world would start understanding how much value that it brings. This is now Vital the romantic. Through understanding, we'd have less fights, we'd have less arguments, we'd have less ego, we'd have less wars. You know, I literally do believe that we can make the world a better place. And I believe that it starts with empathy, just understanding somebody else without having to take out the fist. You know, like you mentioned, you're not a black person.
Right.
But the fact that you've tried to understand, wow, that's what you deal with when a cop is following you. And unfortunately, I have experienced that too.
And
I'm a light-skinned, very
sure. But well, I mean, and that was, I guess that was the thing that kind of blew me away. And it's something that I knew, because when I was a kid, I lived in Los Angeles, what's now South Central.
Yeah.
So I had a little bit of understanding, and you know, being in the military and stuff like that, you know, there is a I don't even know the word. It may or may not be empathy, but you understand what they are kind of going through on a very, very limited basis.
But even if you make the effort to try and understand them, you've already opened the door to
Right, and
communication,
that's
to understanding.
my grandfather was an extremely racist bigot, and my mother and my aunts and uncles less so, and me, because of my experience, less so. But we all we're all still racist. We're all still bigot.
We have biases, unconscious biases.
And it's the not letting that take us over, or realizing that, wait a minute, that was kind of a racist thing to think, or it's like, why would you think that? Well, because that's the way I was conditioned when I was young, but I'm a grown-up now. I don't have to be that way, and that's the choice that we have to make. So whether it's racism or politics or whatever, you have the right to feel and believe and think what you want to.
But that's a part of the book, Innovation Mindset. It's also about opening your mind to the different, to the new. Diversity and inclusion has become this, buzzword in corporate America. But the challenge is that it's a program, so it's not organically enforced. And I ultimately believe the ultimate version of diversity inclusion begins with the individual. You've made a choice, right? You've told yourself, I am not that.
Right.
I'm going to become this. I'm going to behave that way.
I am that.
No, but you weren't racist or bigot.
But I want to be less of that.
Yes.
Right.
And that's the step where I think diversity and inclusion begins. It has to begin with the self, and asking yourself, is this really what I think is the right way to behave? And if you believe that is the right way to behave, there's nothing I can do to influence you. But if you truly look into yourself and you realize that, well, I'm a man, but I can understand how it must feel for women for the last 40 years who have been suppressed in the world. I'm not a woman,
right?
But I try to understand what it must be like for a woman. What must it be like for a gay man to have had to hide his secret all this time? I didn't have a secret to hide, but what must that be like?
Right.
And how can I now encourage and be on the right side of history?
And there's a lot of jokes going around and about millennials and Generation Z and all of this stuff. And my personal opinion of the young people today is the first time that I have had a positive feeling about the young people and what they're going to do since the 60s.
Wow.
And I see a lot happening with the young people that's where change comes from.
Yes.
Not from us old guys. The young people are the ones that say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't right. We're not going to do this anymore. I mean, look at all our founding fathers in this country. They were all young people, So.
But to tap into what you're saying, I want to quickly add to this is that I have to oftentimes correct myself because I don't want to become the old guy who says, well, in my generation, it was better. Yeah. In my generation, we didn't do that. Because what happens is when we were in our 20s, we complained about the older generation. And then now we've become older, we're going to do the exact same error.
Sure.
And like you said, they are the young ones. The world is now, they inherit what we pass on to them. More importantly, the world today is no longer the world of yesterday.
Right.
And so I think it's a challenge. It's not easy, but it's for us as adults, as mature human beings, to adapt to this new world.
Right. And to pass the torch.
And pass the torch.
It's like, okay, we screwed it up, you fix it. I mean,
you go screw it up in your way.
Yeah, screw it up for yourselves. We screwed it up for us, and you guys. But it's like, okay, so when I bought my first home, and I was married, I had a couple kids, and my wife wasn't working, but I was. I had one job, and I wasn't making an enormous amount of money, but I could afford to buy a house. There is no way, even kids that are coming, especially kids that are coming out of college with this huge debt, can even afford to rent a place to live, much less buy a home. I mean, it's, never mind. I got way off in left field sometimes.
Okay.
And we're going to have to wrap this up because we are kind of running out of time.
It's awesome. It's been amazing.
I can't thank you enough. I've wanted to invite you on for a long time, and it just never, the timing just wasn't right.
It worked out. It happened when it was supposed to
Yeah,
happen.
and that's the other thing I love about what goes on in this world is, you know, hey, when it's time, it happens. So,
Yeah, indeed.
And I do want to remind everybody, if you come out this Saturday to Barnes & Noble over on Rainbow at 9 o'clock, I'll be doing a book signing over there.
You wrote a book?
No, I just go in there and sign books that people have bought. I set up a little table there, and they come out, and, you know, I'll sign their books.
I'll be there at 9 o'clock.
Okay,
Barnes
cool.
& Noble?
Yeah,
I will be there. Awesome.
But hey, guys, and thank you again. We do appreciate everybody that watches the show, and for those of you who don't watch,
They're missing out.
yeah, they are.
Yeah.
But they'll come around sooner or later. Anyway, thank you again, Vital.
Absolute pleasure.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
You are welcome here anytime. If
Thank
you
you.
got anything that you want to promote or anything that you got a new book coming out or whatever, come and let us know. I'll help you get it out there. And remember, if you're going to do it with styles. Thanks, everybody.
Nice work, John.